Greetings, Dr. Mark Winton here at the University of Central Florida Department of Criminal Justice. And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about profiling male and female animal abusers. A lot of this discussion will be based on the article Psychological Profile of Male and Female Animal Abusers by Schwartz, Femau, Schenk, and Ragatz, 2012, published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence, Volume 27, Number 5, pages 846 to 861. And I'll talk a little bit about their literature review as well as their findings and some other observations as well. They start by talking about a survey that found that 10% of males and 9% of females admitted to animal cruelty. They also found or reported that other researchers have found a relationship between animal cruelty in childhood and then antisocial behaviors in adolescence and adulthood, such as gang membership, assaulting others, and interpersonal violence. Also, there's a link, although this is a little more out of the area of this discussion, between serial killing and childhood animal cruelty. Obviously, most of those that abuse animals do not become serial killers, but it's certainly something we see among serial killers, part of their profile. There's also a link between having a criminal record and also having engaged in childhood animal abuse. And also we find that criminal thinking patterns are related to animal abuse as well as other abusive or violent behaviors. And this was found in both men and women. And then finally, before we get into the actual study, the authors report in their literature review that victims and perpetrators of bullying were more likely to abuse animals and also had lower levels of empathy toward animals as well as sensitivity. So the current study was based on a sample of 1,434 undergraduate students, and they used multiple measures. They found that 6% of males and 1.4% of females reported abusing animals, either intentionally having hurt an animal or pet or made animals fight. So they used those two criteria there. They found that there were no demographic differences between the two groups of animal abusers, non-animal abusers, but they also started to look at gender as a independent variable as well. They did find that animal abusers had a higher power orientation, and also that female animal abusers had higher criminal thinking scores than the females in the sample who did not abuse animals. Remember, males were more likely to abuse animals than females, but we're beginning to see some differences emerge here between female animal abusers and those that were in the control group, or those who did not, females who did not abuse animals. Also, they found that female animal abusers scored higher on the neuroticism scale than the female control group. They also found in general animal abusers had higher levels of criminal thinking, which was also reported in some of the other studies. And animal abusers, like reported in other studies, were more likely to have bullied or been bully victims. And this was also higher for female animal abusers than those females that did not abuse animals. Now, really, in concluding in this study and the literature that they reviewed, what can we take from this? And first I would point out that they found that the strongest markers of animal abuse were criminal thinking, bullying, and engaging in illegal activity. Also, animal abuse and interpersonal violence were related, and this of course is important to assess in cases of domestic violence, to find out if there are animals in the home and if the animals have been harmed in any way. Also, childhood animal abuse is a warning sign. So if we find that a child or adolescent is engaging in animal cruelty, it is extremely important to get early interventions through counseling or some type of psychological or psychiatric care. And by getting adequate counseling early on, this increases the chances of avoiding problematic behaviors later in life. So we want to find out what's going on in that child's life where they're abusing animals, and if we can assist them in dealing with those problems, or helping the family assist them, or the school. Some of the other features, of course, related to looking at animal abusers would be to look at organized criminal activities related to animal fighting, for example, cockfighting or dog fighting that we've seen occur. There's also even discussions in the criminal justice literature about sports and animals, for example, dog racing, greyhound racing to be specific, that there's discussion about that related to animal cruelty. And there's a lot of changes now. In fact, as I make this video, we're seeing some federal legislation proposed that would really strengthen the animal cruelty laws and help to protect animals. And again, I mentioned that that it's very important to find out what's going on in a child's life if they are abusing animals, because there's usually going to be other psychological and sociological problems occurring in that child's environment, as well as internally in that child's mind. And so that's relevant to take a look at. Also, we'd want to address illegal organized scenarios where animals are used for fighting, and also address any animal abuse that is presented in videos and sold or distributed to groups or the public. And so I think this obviously is an area that many people feel very strongly about, but knowing that animal abusers also tend to be tied into other criminal and violent activities is important to know as well. And this also leads us to consider screening when we have cases of violent individuals that are violent toward other humans, also to screen to see if they've been violent toward animals. And this concludes this video.